in a village which was very remote in Sanyapuli, but in Hong Sa district, Sanyapuli, it was so far away from the town. So whenever that we needed, I remember as a kid, I was very little. I was around 5 and 6. That's when the communists took over Laos, the country of Laos. But according to what my parents told me, I was there, but I was too little to remember. So right before the country of Laos fell under the communist control, there were spies from Vietnam. There were Mien people. Two of them, and the rest of them were Khmer and Thin. So others group people were joined with them, but they were the leaders. So the two Mien guys, one of them's name is Chan Wang Se Chao. He's a nicer guy, and another one was Kim Chiu. And he's the one with the hot temper, so who's the meanest. So later on, the Royal Laos soldiers shot him and killed him, but the nicer one was survived. So every day they would just went to my parents' house and talk. They share stories and exchange cultural knowledge. Sometimes he just went to the field and worked with my parents the whole days, and they were chanting, having fun. So I guess his philosophy was try to get the people to trust him, so people can join the communists. But right after the country of Laos fell, then a lot of people got scared because they took people to Samana. Right? To me, I compare to the concentration camp that a lot of, if you are American, you learn that how Joseph Stalin treated people in the concentration camp, right? And labor camp, things like that. I would compare that to, I would compare the concentration camp of Samana to the concentration camp. Because of that, a lot of people, I'm not sure about the Laotian population, but those that I know, and I have friends who have been sent there. I mean, friends or parents, relatives have been sent there, and some of them didn't survive because they had to work there until they died. And they use a lot of forces. Right, and one of my uncle's friends who robbed someone, and the communists took him and just shot him in the crowd. So just try to scare people. So because of that, we got scared, and in 1975, the whole people in my village, they planned to escape the communists from Hong Sa to Thailand. So I'm not sure if you heard of the Mueang Han, close to Hong Sa. We took that route. I was about 5 or 6 without shoes. So I remember, I could remember exactly how it was. It was raining the whole day. We just walked in the rain without shoes, without umbrella, or even the plastic in Laos. Only rich people were able to afford the umbrella, right? And poor people, those who some of them could afford the plastic that they used to cover themselves to protect them from the rain. And for the one who could not afford it, the only thing that they could use to protect them is a banana leaf, right? They pick a banana leaf and to cover themselves. And that's how it was for us. So we just walked. We passed Mueang Han, and then another town called Nai Yang. Then the last one, the third one was Nangua, which is very close to the border. I could remember that because at the border they were shooting, bombing or things like that, try to scare each other. So communists doesn't go to the Thailand side or Thai didn't come to the Laotian side. So I could hear the bomb here and there, and when we got there, it was late already. So the leader of the town of Nangua, they let us spend a night at the schoolhouse. And the next morning, very early in the morning, the communists went there and they stopped us. And they said, we will not do anything to you guys, but you have to go back to where you came from. So we had no choice. We all had to go back to where we were. So that was my first escape attempt that I could remember. And the next year, the whole village, the people of the whole village planned to escape again. But my grandfather, who was my father's father, was very sick and he was dying, and we couldn't go with them. We were left behind. So luckily, I had my grandma, which is my mom's mom, and her brother, younger brother, and older brother went there and stayed with us. That's all. So we were left behind, and the rest of the people left us, and some of them made it, and some of them didn't. Those who were captured by the communists were sent back to where they were again. And later on, they were allowed to move to the village that I was in. And luckily, we had them to help us when my grandfather died. So after he died, I'm not sure, I couldn't remember exactly how long it was. After a while, then those who made it to Thailand went back for their family. And one of the men, so his name is Yem Phu Saturn. He was, I consider him as my hero, who took us to Thailand. So when he went back there with his uncle to get their family, so we tagged along with them. And we thought we made it, but no. We were so scared, we couldn't walk during the day, so we had to sleep during the day and walked at night through the jungles, up and down the hills in the jungles without using flashlight because we were too scared. The communist soldiers were everywhere looking for us. So close to midnight that night, so we came and we crossed a river. It was below the communist camp and soldiers camp, and the leader that I mentioned earlier, Yem Phu Saturn, I consider him as our hero was because he went ahead and he got caught by the communist soldiers. And he was smart. He pretended and he told the soldiers that his kids and wife were lost and he was looking for them. He pretended to call for them. Actually, he told us to hide. It's not good. That's all he said. So we ran into bushes, and I remember it was pretty dark at night, so we ran into, my family ran into the cattle trail. It's been used for years, I don't know for how many years. It was so deep, it was so higher than me. So we all ran into the bushes to hide, except for one of my uncle. He kept going. So after about 5 to 10 minutes later, I heard about 50 to 100 shots. Then they shot him. And that night was so horrible. So we got scared, we retreated. As we retreated, bombs exploded everywhere. There were thousands and thousands of gunshots into the sky. I remember when I was looking into the sky, it was just like every year that we have a firework display at the fairground for the 4th of July. That's how it was like. So we had to retreat, kept walking through the night without flashlights. If we use flashlight, these communist soldiers would spot us and go and kill us. So we kept going until almost dawn. When we were so tired, we were hiding in the bushes and slept for a few hours. And when the sunrise, we woke up and we found that my cousin's dad and their grandpa were missing. So the dad was the one who I mentioned earlier that was being shot by the communists, and the grandparents were lost. They used a different trail, so they were lost forever. And for us, we kept retreating to a ghost house and to another one, the ghost house called Huitalo. And then we went back to another one called Palai. We were hiding in there for 2 weeks, but we didn't stay in the village. We were hiding in the bushes by the village, and of course, we got some support from the people there. And after 2 weeks, then we found that there were 2 guys in that village knew the way that went around the communist camp. So we pitched in money and paid those 2 guys to take us to Thailand. And again, we could not walk during the day. We could only walk through the jungle at night with a flashlight. And finally, we got to the border of Thailand and Laos. So right on the other side of the border, there was a village called Ban Ko. And we saw newly recruited communist soldiers, and they were unarmed, but we got so scared, everybody ran. How stupid it was. Because when you are fleeing a country, you have to carry everything that you can carry on your back. And some parents, they even had to add on a child on top of whatever they were carrying. How can you run away from the soldiers? Luckily, the communist soldiers said, don't worry, don't be scared. We are not going to do anything to you. They greeted us, they let us go. And after a while, we saw another group of them. We did the same thing. They told us the same thing. So after we passed that village, it was about sunset. So getting darker and darker as we went uphill. And I remember looking on both sides of the path, the trail. Everywhere was full of buffalo skeletons or heads, things like that, because the communists slaughtered all the animals and ate, and they just left the skeleton on the side of the road. So finally, we crossed the border, went to the other side, and we spent the night there. It was so dirty, everywhere was full of cow dung, but it was a great sleep because we got a little more freedom now, right? So we had a good sleep. Then the next day we kept going, and finally we got to the refugee camp in Pur district, Ampere Pur, and Nan province. We could only stay in there for 1 month, and they relocated us to a new refugee camp called Ban Nam Yao. And they took us in the truck, just like you're transporting I would say that similar to those trucks that they transport tomatoes or corns or whatever around here. So, so they just loaded us in the truck, 10-wheeler truck, and took us there in the rain. And they just dropped us on the side of the road. It was everywhere because it was raining so hard in tropical area. When it rains, it really rains, right? Everywhere is muddy. So they just left us there with, the mud was, some area it was all the way to your knee. It was horrible, but the next day we were able to went uphill and find spots that we could build the houses. So a lot of people built the house, and in that refugee camp, after it was done, it was fenced with barbed wire throughout the whole refugee camp. And we were allowed to get out of the refugee camp in the morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. to buy food from the farmer's market, which is on the other side of the road. So anyone who didn't get back after 10, and if they get caught, they were putting in jail, or they had to work for the people who, mostly those are volunteer soldiers, right? They call also, right? They would sometimes they would kick you, beat you up. So if you have seen the Thai kickboxing, they use everything. They knee you, they elbow you, punch you, kick you. So they do all kind of things in that refugee camp. And for those who didn't have firewood, some of them they went out of camp to get firewood, and some men got beat up by Thai people. Some women got raped. So they did all kind of things to us. I'm not saying that all Thai people are bad, so only certain people, right? So don't misunderstand me. So that's how they treated us in Ban Nam Yao. I'm not sure about other refugee camp in Nagpur, like Angkor here. So those people were so mean, and finally they built a school there. When I was 10 years old, I was so happy. Yeah, it's first time ever I was able to go to school at 10 years old. So, was there success? No. Only a month later, someone bombed right by the school, about 200 yards from the school. I was so scared, I scared to death, so I just dropped out. And I waited a year later, nothing happened again, so I went back there. Finally, I was able to finish first grade. So that was my only success. And later on, we were relocated to another refugee camp, Chiang Kham. This refugee camp, it was also fenced around. The whole camp was barbed wire. And at the beginning, we were able to get written permission from the director of the refugee camp to go to Chiang Kham to buy whatever that we could afford to buy. But later on, because more and more people went in there, and some of refugees, because it was so horrible in the refugee camp, right? Because there's no running water, no electricity, and not even enough food, right? 10 families had to share only one outhouse, thing like that. And water, the only way you could get water is to drop a bucket with a rope and down into a water well, then pull it out by hand. That was the only way that we could get water in Chiang Kham refugee camp. And they tried to make the sewer system, which is ran around the building. It was so smell. So, yeah, I remember exactly how it smelled like. It just came back to me. Then later on, because a lot of people sneak things in the refugee camp because we didn't get enough food, so we had to buy extra food. Whoever can afford to buy food from people outside, especially Thai people. People kept sneaking things in, and the director of the refugee camp got mad, and he added another 10-foot fence with bamboos only, so you cannot even see outside. So it's exactly like prison, right? Finally, in 1984, the United States and the United Nations representatives went there and interviewed people who were interested to come to this country. And my friends, my best friend, and a lot of my friends were able to pass the interview, and they were on the way to come here. And I was relying on them to because what they did for living in the Chiang Kham refugee camp was that they were making Mien jewelry, and they were making a lot of money, and I was relying on them, so they would pay me to help them. So one day I made about 20 baht, which is equivalent to 66 cents. So that was so much money for me during that time in that refugee camp. So since they were on the way to come here, my parents were not willing to come because a lot of people, I'm not sure about Hmong people, Laotian would do the same thing. They've spread stupid rumor, right? They said if you go to America, you will end up in a vest or in a can. People that eat people. That's how stupid it was. So, but that didn't scare me because my best friend, who I was able to rely on, were on the way here. So I tried to convince my parents. By the way, I'm the oldest, and being the oldest one, and during that time, I was the only son that my parents could rely on me too. Because remember, I graduated first grade. I was able to read Thai. So they rely on me too. Even though I was only about 15, I kind of like threatened them a little bit. I told my parents that whether you are going with me or not, I am going. Then since they had to rely on me a lot, so they agreed to come. And finally, April 5th, 1985, we went down to Pananikom, and we spent 6 months there learning how to survive in this country. We got 6 months to learn ESL. We got 6 months to learn survival skills here. And when we were about done, my grandma had a stroke. Half of her body was paralyzed, and we had to stay a while until she was getting better before we could come here. And finally, my real freedom came on November 7, 1986. So we were flying from Bangkok to Tokyo, then to San Francisco, then down to Fresno. My cousins were sponsoring us, and they went over there and picked us up, and they brought us here. So I'm rooted here ever since.
for the detailed caption of a Thai newspaper on it. So in the camp, sometimes it's just like a warehouse where you have to divide it up into different sections. And in order to have privacy, some of the family had nothing else but to use newspaper to kind of like separate one family from the next. And so that's what we had. And those are actually real newspaper from Thailand during that time when the refugee camp took place in the 80s. And just to recap, some of the soldiers in the camps, they're supposed to be volunteer soldiers. Since you mentioned about rape, one incident that happened, particularly within our family, is that there was a couple of soldiers came in to try to take advantage of a 14-year-old girl in a refugee camp. And my father and his friend went and tried to defend the girl, and they fought. And to this day, my dad still has this big scar on his back because they stabbed him when he was trying to defend the girl, and from that happening. So it does happen, unfortunately, because when a person in power has the capable of doing it, and they don't have some sort of punishment system going on there, so they took advantage of that, and it happens sometimes in refugee camps, and you hear stories of that happening, and a lot of times the women don't report it, or we're too scared to report it because we're refugees. Who's going to look after us? And unfortunately, that happened too often than it should. And you mentioned Pananikom. Pananikom is the last refugee camp before anybody. When they send you to Pananikom, everybody gets happy because this is the last camp that you have to go to before you go to your next destination, whether it's be United States, Canada, Australia, and some even went to Argentina. There's like a big Lao colony in Argentina right now because they accept, whoever accepts Lao refugees, that's where we went. And so in that camp, they would try to teach. We actually have a manual. So some people still probably have in the community a manual how to live a life in the United States. Teach you how to even use a toilet. I mean, there's all types of skills that you need to learn in order to be successful here in the United States. How to use a dishwasher or wash and dry, whatever it is. How to take a bus. So you have this manual that you have to go through class and learn before you come to the United States. And Pananikom was the last camp in Bangkok that you had to go to learn all these survival skills in the modern world because before you can come to the United States. And usually you spend like a month or two there trying to kind of like learn how to do things. And one of the rumors that we had was like there's no sticky rice in the U.S. So a lot of people was like freaking out. Oh, no sticky rice. We better not go there. But of course, just a rumor. There's plenty of sticky rice here, right? So, anyways, I'll give the microphone to our next speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, I know a little English, not too much, my daughter translate for me. ภาษาเราพูดไม่ได้ภาษาอังกฤษbây giờ hãy cho họ là cái giờ vì cái cái tôi nhớ thì nó của hai đôi cái chỗ không sợ đời cái của sáng sớm lo của bỏ của miệng này cái giờ đôi nó là này của thiên linh này đôi này sẽ đúng.
Okay, ever since when I was born, I saw that my mom wore this kind of outfit.
Giờ linh đã cái chỉ của một sai xong rồi chỉ của gì bỏ thì cái kia chỗ u kia chỗ nó những chỉ tàu dùng nhau thì nhau y o xong sẽ chỉ kia chỗ khó nhau xong kia chỗ khó chỉ họ lo dùng chỗ ta liền sẽ chỉ dòng trai.
For as young, I was only about 7 years old, and I was very young at the time. So the earliest memories that I've ever had was that we migrated a lot. We will move. We will run from one place to another. We will stay there for like about a month or two, and then we will run again to another village or another place. We'll stay there for like a month or two, maybe a year or 2 years, and then we'll have to run again.
Giờ đây của nhà tết của chỉ một chiếc cái ti ta chỉ một cái tuổi trẻ một cái hạt tụ ta lên là cái dòng trai hay cái thầu của chỉ nó chỉ nhớ chị quý thường rõ rồi ở mua trâu xong này chị như trâu nhớ là tua kia sầu gì lúc đó họ.
And because we're always running from the gunfires and the bombings, my father had about 5 of them, 5 siblings in total, his brothers, 5 of them total. And 3 of them, they were soldiers and they all died in the war. I even have a 6-year-old brother during that time that my dad was carrying him on his back, and someone shot my brother and he died on my father's back.
Giờ đến tới thầu lúc tích xong xa chỗ ôm này cũng như do để kia đó nó chị lúc tích như chị tù đi chị sau thầu cũng một cầu xong chị này không qua bỏ kia là chị bây giờ không chị ôn chụp cảnh cũng chị cũng rõ rồi.
My during that time, I was probably about 10 years old. The year was 1972. 1975. 1975. During that time, and then we all heard that the General Beng Pao he ran from the country, and so we were all scared.
Chị giờ nó đã theo đi kia muốn nhớ tỏ hai rồi khi tỏ hai cái này không qua bỏ vô tỏ hai lọ.
And I guess we all ran into the jungle. We stayed there, waiting for the general to come back.
Giờ nó nên đã bỏ mà nó bị bông họ sẽ chơi sẽ ô tô dùng gì trên chạy dùng nghề chỉ như chỉ có quậy số liền.
And because of all the bombings, it was exploding everywhere. I was really scared, and at the same time, the adults would not allow us to cry.
Chứ nó cái bỏ là sẽ thế dùng khen chỉตัวเขาไปdùng khen lúc đấy màกูจะใช้แห่งเล็กกูจะจีสาบอกขนาดนี้นะ
And I'm still very scared now because I see the war that's happening in Ukraine and Russia, and that has affected me, and I'm still very scared from my own experience.
Giờ lên đây thế là nên chọn gì nhớ tàu lâu lúc chiều đồ tới chiều rồi chị trong xa chỗ chua chị cũng chỉ ở ít chút thấy lại chị cũng chỉ xa tiền nhớ nói gì tua chị cũng chỉ số kia một thấy chị thấy cho bây giờ trong cái.
So for about like 4 years total, we were running. But since my father was a soldier himself, he decided that it'll be best if we try to escape the country of Laos. So I got to, we all got to Thailand when I was about 14 years old.
Thầu cũng một cầu chí trong việc của vô gì về của thứ tết từ bây giờ là mà lấy xa thì nhớ tàu cổ trong được thay tế này.
We stayed in Thailand for about a total of 10. I stayed in Thailand for about a total of 10 years. I was 15 when I got married. I had 3 children after my marriage, in total of 10 years before we decided to come to the USA.
Đó khó là kẻ là thấy cơ lúc tết lúc xuân rồi chỉ một chơi nhau để kẻ cơ như yếu tố đồ tỉnh nó đi vì là khó chỉ sát đồ tỉnh nó mà do yếu lo lại chỉ chơi lùng mà.
We actually stayed until the Thai people decided that they were going to close down the camps. And a reason why I did not want to come to the USA is because I was too old to try to learn English.
Giờ đây của tôi sau đấy mình cả của tôi tết từ bây giờ là mà lâu là cũng chỉ chơi mà của tôi chỉ một cần tới theo bộ họ được tài nông là mà của chỉ chơi cho nó phải mà cũng nhiều xe.
I had 3 kids already by the time that we came to Merced, and my husband, he actually went to school a lot, and I couldn't drive and I couldn't speak English, and so I was very worried and stressed.
Mà của tôi sau đấy mình cả mà sống lúc này sẽ là cũng gì sống nhiều chọc là gì cũng nhiều xe chọc.
I was most stressed out about trying to learn how to drive because that was very hard for me.
Giờ nên là thầu của tôi sau tao ở sống cũng chơi trả được phải là cũng thế này mình tao mèo tao mò tao rau nó cũng chăm nhau nó là cũng thế trong xe.
And it took me about 2 years for me to actually get my license, my permit, and everything. And finally, after about 2 years, I can drive, so I can go to the store and get my kids their milk. And I was less worried by then.
Giờ tới giờ nó cũng mua chế nhau thế cũng mua nó phải trả lại mà cũng dùng xe hành rồi lúc tết thì mình cài thì cũng tôi nhau cũng chỉ nó cũng chỉ tao tí cái chọn gì thế cũng chỉ tao nó bỏ nó rõ lại cũng dùng xe.
I'm very happy and fortunate that, you know, I'm living here in the United States. Now I have a home, I can drive, and I no longer hear all the bombing.
Giờ đến đây cũng dùng xe hành ta sẽ cũng hay khai để thầu tết tôi tao tết thì nó tao thầu lúc rồi đi ta sẽ cũng nhận nhiều cũng tôi sao lúc trồng gì nó là tôi cho hay là cái cái rồi ngoài phone mà cũng là sự trình hợp khởi của cái kia họ mới khẩu trồng cái
And so I came here into the United States in November of 1989. And then my mother, she did not come to the United States until 6 months later. And so I remember the first time when she was here, it was during the 4th of July. And they were shooting fireworks, and that scared her, so she got up really quick, and she ran to me and trying to cover me.
Okay, còn đâu tôi cũng cho ý này thì cũng niệm mà nó lúc số còn nên cho mà chính thiên chạy sắp rồi thìเราkhởi của thì còn cái lý kia thì bên nhau thì chém rồi này cũng kia rồi còn đây giờ chúng này for it country.
So I told my mother that, you know, for her not to worry. It's the 4th of July, and it's a celebration celebrated by the Americans here, and for her not to worry because this is not Laos anymore.
Tôi sẽ này nó có thể sẽ nó dùng hình kia đi thấu bếp kia cũng như lúc cho dùng hình nó hình tệ rồi mà cũng sẽ cũng lo cũng.
Sometimes on the news, when I'm looking at the news nowadays with the war that's going on between Ukraine and Russia, I cry because I care and I have a love for them for the fact that I experienced it myself. And this is all that I have to share with you guys, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And you're such a good translator. You do saying that he likes the way the government system here in the United States. Okay. Any other question?
For the mom lady, I was wondering if she made any handout in the camps that was sent to the United States to be sold.
Cô loan sang vô sẽ chế mua cọc lót rồi gì của gì họ phản đấu mùa thì khử nọ khử hậu là gì phải xuống phải thế mà của gì khử tàu cầu trong đồ ví này gì của gì xí sầu của tết phản đấu nó tết nó cũng sẽ ổn định hơn.
So when I got to the refugee camps, I was only 14, and by 14, I already know how to sew. And for 10 years living in the refugee camps, that was my way of earning my money and my income. So any kind of hang dao or bang dao that I do, I know how to make them all.
Của tôi nó họ lựa bây giờ nó cái mùa chơi nè, của tôi nó họ lựa cho họ chế khăm mà nè, thì của cháu phản đấu trong mình cao chế khăm mà đâu em đi.
My brother works at the okay. My brother works at this place called Kama, where they sell the pandao, and so I guess I had a little bit more of an advantage, so that he is able to sell my pandao for me. And during that time, only I guess a lot of the Americans, they were interested in the pandao, and so they were the ones who was always purchasing them.
That's what I did. I sold handao for my mom's friends. And that's why I have a large collection of it myself.
There's some out there. Thank you. Maybe two more questions before the night. You have your hand up, or is that? No, okay. Okay. So if nothing else, we'd like to thank the speakers again, and also to remind people, that, folks, that the exhibit will be up until the 29th of May, and then we will take it down, and then in September we will have it up in Sacramento at the California Museum right next to the state capitol. So that will be up in another 3 months, and we'll focus mostly on the Lowland Lao and the Yumian community for that exhibit. Thank you again, all the panelists, for being here. You guys were wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for being here. Tonight is our closing reception, but the show still runs until May 29th. So if you know some people who haven't been here yet, please let them come along so they can experience this exhibit before it's too late. I think next is going to go to Sacramento, but we got the privilege of having it here in Merced first, which is really exciting for me, and I think for our community as a whole. There's a whole team of people that brought this together, and it wouldn't have been possible without them. You'll hear a lot about them tonight, and you'll be introduced to them tonight. Throughout this whole program, too, we have still tons of food and drinks, so help yourselves. But before we go any further, I'd like to introduce.
Well, what's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I'm Colton Dennis. I'm the executive director of the Merced County Arts Council and the Multicultural Arts Center. And it's been such a privilege for me to be a part of this exhibit and to be a part of our community here in Merced. So now you know who I am. I'm going to introduce Dr. Benya, who brought this exhibit here. Dr. Benya.
Yeah, so this is, like Colin was saying, is the closing ceremony, but the show continues until May 29th. Next, we'll go to Sacramento in September, October, and November. So if you miss it here, you're gonna have to drive quite a long way to see the next one. So better do it here while you still can. All right, so so the closing ceremony, usually it's more serious than the opening ceremony. We're gonna focus on 3 individuals who will tell their stories about their journey from Laos to the United States, particularly Merced. You can see some of the stories upstairs already that has been recorded. We started out as an oral history project where we went around and interviewed people in our community from the Lao, the Lowland Lao, the Hmong, the Mian community, and gather their stories. Lao refugees have been in the United States for over 40 years. So imagine if those people came here in their 30s or 40s. Right now, you can do the math in their 70s and 80s. And it's a precious, and it's also is a time concern. We want to record as many stories as possible because believe it or not, some of the individuals that we interview are no longer with us. About 3 or 4 of them passed away recently, some due to COVID and some because of old age, sickness. That's the way of life. That's the way it is. So that's why we interview actually over, I would say like 30, 40 stories from Redding to San Diego to Fresno, also Sacramento, and even in Minnesota. We try to gather as much information as possible, and we interview them in the Lao language or whatever language they are comfortable speaking. Some are in Mian, some were in Hmong. We haven't had a chance to actually transcribe all of them yet, but at least we got their stories and we have them captured in videos of their journey to the United States. As you can see upstairs, we have 4 different phases that we phases that we divide up. The first one is the room, life in Laos. So we try to focus the story and the interviews based on what their life was like back in Laos before they escaped to the United States. And the second part is their life in the re-education camp. Not everybody went to re-education camp in Laos, we call seminars, camps. And then the third room would be the life in the refugee camp. So all of us have to go through that journey first in the refugee camp before we can come to the United States. And that's the last room, the life in the United States. So today I would like to invite 4 individuals from our communities who will kind of like enhance the whole experience of Between Two Worlds by telling their stories firsthand, how they came to the United States, and what was like life in Laos in refugee camp and escaping the country and coming here to a new land that they never been to or they have no idea what's about, and settling in the United States and finally trying to assimilate and be accustomed to the new life in the United States. So we'll hear some of these specific stories, and then at the end, we're going to ask that you hold your questions, so you can either ask individual speakers, or you can ask as a group any questions that you may have after they're able to tell the stories. And feel free to ask questions about the exhibit as well. We have people who worked so hard to put this together, Lisa, Sue, so Colton, who sponsored the exhibit, and individuals from the Lao community who built a wall and put everything together here. So it's like a collective group effort, and we're really lucky to have Merced as one of the cities to host the exhibit. At first, we were going to do it Fresno, but that didn't work out. But so Merced became the lucky place for us to have it here. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn the mic to Sue, and she's going to do the introduction to the 4 individuals here, and then we can start the process. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ขอบใจได้สบายดีทุกคน Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. We are excited เราก็ดีใจหลายว่าทุกคนมานี่มื้อนี้จะให้แม่ป้ากับพุตู้ดวงตาคือกันกับน้าบ่าว from the Mien community. They're going to come up and speak today. So Putu Dongta Singdala, he is one of our eldest members in our Lao community here in Merced. He is also a war veteran as well, fought alongside with Americans during the time of the Vietnam War. He holds a very special part in our community because he's also what we call the Mo Pon, which is the person that actually is the one that leads the ceremonies, leads the traditional Basi ceremonies that we have, the Sukwon. He's also very, very talented. He also is a person who knows how to weave baskets. I mean, that's something I learned recently by doing the exhibit in Lao New Year, that I learned how talented he is. So we're very blessed to have him part of our community, and I like to have him come up. And so, so give him a big round of applause.